Hello, hello. Happy Thirsty Thursday. So, Thirsty Thursday means it is here. Here's the tea with Wine Diva Tiara. This evening, we are going to be talking about wines of Idaho. I'm excited to have Phylicia here with me today. We are going to be talking about the wine region that is Idaho, which I had no idea was such a thing. Did you know that Idaho has like viticulture? I didn't know. Like I'm used to like especially for the United States, like California. I'm from Virginia, so I know that Virginia has wine. New York, I know that there's like the Finger Lakes and that kind of thing, but I am not at all connected with Idaho wine. So I'm just really excited about that. Sorry, I just like bumped my microphone. But so before we get started, because we're getting some Idaho facts, I wanted to share with you what I am drinking this evening. So tonight I have Fact Chardonnay. It is a dry Chardonnay. I actually haven't taken a sip of it yet. So let me give it a swirl and a sniff. As I expected, I was thinking it wasn't going to have a lot of like malolactic fermentation on it or anything like that. So very crisp, very refreshing. As it's warming up here in California, this is kind of a great little wine to sip on the porch. I was gonna say on the couch, but like that too. But on the porch, like or on a balcony out in the sunshine by the pool, all that good stuff as it warms up here. I know it's February for other people, and so wherever you are in the world, might not be as warm as California is, but while doing that. Okay, so it looks like we lost Phylicia there for a second. So let me see if we can get her pulled back up because I am not seeing her anymore because this should be some fun. So let me know in the comments or wherever, what wine regions are you familiar with, and if you've ever heard of Idaho wine, because I don't know, I'm just kind of like floored by it. Yeah. So for those who don't know who I am Tiara, aka T, your wine diva. I rep for a pretty awesome sauce winery. We're actually based out of Napa, California, but we actually source grapes from all over the world. We do have a lot of California wine, but that doesn't mean that we're solely Californian. I love to help pair people with their perfect wines. And in saying all of that, I see that Phylicia's made it back on here. So I'm going to bring her up and have her introduce herself and tell us what she's done in the wine world and like get us to know a little bit more about the wine country of Idaho. All right. So she's coming up in 3, 2, 1. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, I am good. I'm a little tired, but I am good. So first, before we go crazy, I know you always wear your wine cork accessory, and so I wanted to match you in that. And I have my little wine bottle earrings here.
I love it.
And then to represent Idaho wine, I got this shirt from San Chapelle Winery before I moved. And it's the whole outline of Idaho in wines, of different varietals of wine.
I love it. I love that. That is awesome. Okay.
I know. As soon as I saw that this T-shirt, I was like, I must own this. This must be part of my wardrobe.
It's perfect. So let's tell people, where are you right now? Where do you live? And what time is it there?
I live.
Oh, we lost her again for a second there. Technical difficulties, I gotta tell you. So she is in I got her back. You're back.
So I went from having no cameras to 2 cameras, and you turn one off and then they both go away. So I'm just leaving it. Okay. So anyways, I live right now in the south of Spain. My husband is active duty military. So we get moved around quite a bit, which is actually how we got moved to Idaho. He was stationed there for his recruiting stint, and so we ended up getting stationed in Twin Falls, Idaho, which is just outside of where like all of the wine regions are. And I fell in love with it. So right now I'm in the south of Spain, close to Rota, And it's like 3 o'clock in the morning here. So time change. It's fun.
I wanted to give you that shout out because we're here at it's 6 p.m. here in LA, but 3 a.m. So I'm super I'm just in love that you decided that you were going to get up and share all of this with us at such a crazy time.
Well, and it's because, there's not a lot of people who know a lot about Idaho wines. And I still, I'm far away. And even though I live in such a predominant old wine region of the world, it's like I still miss my Idaho wines. I still miss the taste of it, the culture of it, the people. I mean, everything that has to do with Idaho wine. So that's why even living half a world away, I'm still very involved with the Idaho wine industry scene there.
That's amazing. So, and saying all that, how would you say, since you are living in what is considered an old world wine region now, how does it compare to Idaho wines?
I honestly find myself comparing some of the wines here back to Idaho, and I have a hard time not being, I wouldn't say disappointed, just because when you taste different wines from different regions, everywhere has its own specific taste.
Yeah,
But obviously here Tempranillo is one of the main varietals of Spain, and I remember my very first time ever tasting Tempranillo. My very, very good friend Neil Glancy, who owns C. Sebastian Wine, and was a mentor in my wine world industry, everything. He's the one who cut my teeth in the wine world. He has a Tempranillo that he makes. It's grown in Idaho. Everything's done in Idaho. And I remember I was like, when I was helping people taste it after I did, I was like, I'm not normally a Tempranillo person, but this one is so good. It's that bold, rich, warms you to your toes. You get all of the different fruits in it, and you get this warm, refreshing sense from the tip of your tongue all the way down to your stomach. I mean, you can taste the alcohol all the way down. But it was coming here, it's I knew that, of course, every wine region has its own taste. And coming here, I was like, I should taste some of the best Tempranillos in the world. And some of them have held up to that. And other ones, I was like, oh, Neil.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So, what is it about Idaho wines that you love?
I love how diverse it can be. I mean, Idaho can grow, I believe the last time that I looked at the stats, we can grow 22 varietals within the state.
Wow.
And I mean, it's in such a concentrated area. There's only 3 AVAs in the entire state. So, I mean, then that starts at down towards Hagerman. There's a few wineries that grow below Hagerman, but down in Buell, which is close to where I lived in Twin Falls, all the way up to the Coeur d'Alene area. So, I mean, we're talking right on the side of the shirt. It's this side of the state. Oh, hang on, gotta go backwards. This side of the state. Yeah. And it's just that little area is where all the wines are. And I love how you can have the warm, creamy, buttery Chardonnays, but then you can have the really crisp Vignes of whites, and then you can have, you can have a really smooth Merlot, but then you can have something a Tempranillo that's grown, and it has that rich, bold, Red Mountain kind of bold of Cabernet Sauvignon too. It's we can go from the smooth and the creamy to the big and the bold, and everything in between. So that's one thing where I'm just I love how one small state, which is neighbored to these mega wine country regions. I mean, we were neighbors to all 3 of the major wine ones. How we might be the little guys, but we pack a punch, man. We'll remember tasting Idaho wines.
I love that. So what got you into wine?
Honestly, so I kind of fell into it by accident. We first moved to Idaho, and I knew that I liked drinking wine. We had just moved there from Virginia, so I had done wine tasting in Virginia. Right there, lived in Newport News for several years. That's where my husband and I got married. Was actually in Fort Monroe. So
Dope.
kind of
Love
right in your
it.
alley. And I had lived in Washington prior to that. So, like, I had tasted wines,
Hmm.
um, but I knew marketing. So that's how I got into it was we moved there right before the summertime in April. I was kind of trying to find a job, and I ended up accidentally applying. I honestly think it's a God thing because I don't remember applying to this job. It was one of those, you're just applying to anything on Indeed that you can find that fits your resume that
Right.
sounds cool. So I was doing that, and I got an email back one day from this gentleman who was the general manager and co-owner of a winery in Idaho, um, up in little teeny town Glens Ferry, Idaho, and he asked if I would be interested in marketing for him, becoming the marketing
Awesome.
manager. So we had an interview together, and before Father's Day, which of course, going into the busiest season of the year,
Yeah.
he decided to take a risk and hire somebody who didn't really know the wine industry, but I knew marketing. And I promised to learn as much as I
Mhm.
humanly could, as fast as I could, so I could speak to the demographic, so I could market properly. And that was it. I mean, I spent early mornings, late nights, like I said, with under the wing of my friend Neil Glancy. He was the winemaker at the winery at the time, and thank God he had the patience to deal with me because I was asking some dumb questions. But he's a fantastic teacher and a fantastic winemaker, and so he would let me follow along and ask all the stupid questions, and he was always very patient with me, and it was a part of his passion that really I got obsessed with in a way. It's like, if one person who has spent their entire lives making wine, it's like, that's got to be something really special.
Mhm.
And I drank the Kool-Aid, and that was it. I mean, I went from needing to know enough to market to it where I was like, how many classes can I take? What other online certifications can I take? Can I go for my sommelier certification? And so I ended up leaving that marketing job and ended up working for several wineries doing their marketing. So I was working for 4 wineries doing their marketing in that small area. And then I started kind of branching out from being independently hired from all of these wineries to starting my own company. So
Wow.
currently, I am the founder of Vintage Vine Marketing, which is a wine marketing agency that specializes in marketing with messenger bots. So kind of a
Very
cutting
cool.
edge and a new technology in an old world. But I'm also the co-owner of Idaho Wine Tours, which is the #1 wine tour company in the state. So me and my partner Angel, who still lives in Idaho, and she runs the business like a total boss. She is amazing. I could not have even conceived purchasing this company without knowing that she was going to be there, like driving it home. So yeah, we have a wine tour company there. So if you ever feel like coming to Idaho and doing a wine tour, you let us
I
know.
love that. That is amazing. So, as someone that wasn't like, like didn't start off in like being a sommelier and going like up the ranks, which I feel like whenever I talk to anyone that gets into the wine industry, it's like you get in for the wine first and then you like figure out everything afterward.
And you
afterwards.
stay for the education. Like you
Yeah,
start
yeah.
with the
Like you're
wine
like,
and then
that's exactly right. You're drinking the Kool-Aid or drinking the wine, better yet, and like then it all kind of like falls in together. So for someone who's like interested in maybe tipping like their foot into the door, what do you recommend for someone to get into this industry?
honestly, try to like. Are you talking like to start in the as a job in the industry, or just to somebody who wants to learn more?
Let's start with someone that wants to learn more.
I would honestly say take classes. Like
Mhm.
if you're into wine and you like maybe you're a wine club member at a specific winery, ask if they do classes or if they're be
Mhm.
willing to offer classes. To if they got enough people interested, or Facebook has a lot of information for like different events that are close by, and so if you start putting out the questions, Facebook will find a lot of those classes for you, but also just being in a really good wine community area. Of course, you're in
Mhm.
California, so I mean, you trip on wineries everywhere there.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I've done a lot of wine tasting in California, and I remember, like, you literally trip on them. It's like that and
Like, oh,
Woodinville, the two places where like, oh, that's a winery. Oh boy, that's a winery too. Oh, okay. Being in such a highly concentrated wine region area, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to learn different things. And so I would say just take a class. Like, even just, I mean, I started taking just a normal how to taste wine class. It might sound dumb. I was working in the wine industry, surrounded by wine all day. But I literally asked my friend Angel, who is my co-owner and, business partner. She was one of the managers working at the winery with me. And I literally sat her down before she got off shift one day, and I was like, okay, teach me wine. Like, teach me how to smell it, teach me how to taste it. I feel like I'm doing it all wrong. And I was like, you always watch those movies where, like, the nose is, like, all the way in the glass, and I didn't know if that was right or if that's just them being dramatic.
Right.
It's Hollywood too, so, you have to take that with a grain of salt sometimes. So I was like, teach me how to smell right, to taste right. Is there certain tips that I should be doing? And she's like, yeah, if you open your mouth a little bit, you can actually taste the wine when you smell it before you actually taste it. And I was like, blows your mind. Right. Just simple little things that you can do to help, educate people. And during your tasting experience, it will change your whole experience.
I love it. I feel like wine as a whole is totally an experience. It's more than just like this liquid that gets you drunk. It is, the smell of it, the ambiance, going to a winery is just, I mean, I do both things. Like, I have a wine club that ships to my home. I also have a wine club that I like physically have to go, drive like 90 minutes to get to pick up. But like I like both for like one's convenience and one's like my thing. But the other one is like, oh, I get to go and like talk to people now. Like, I get to go be around people, talk about wine, smell the wine.
Right.
Not to mention, like, whenever you're a wine club member, I feel like there's like additional perks where it doesn't matter which winery you're a part of, like you get either it's like a free tasting for you and some guests, whatever. You get like a special room at some places. Like,
right. Yeah. Some places really pull out all the stops for their wine club members.
I we did we had like a barrel tasting the last time that we went, which is always fun.
Love barrel tastings.
It's always a good time. So like, it's really cool to be able to just like be around people. And I love when I talk to people that are like interested in like getting into wine, whether it's like for a job or for just like, pure pleasure, like people are often kind of nervous. And you see like these movies and like you were saying, like Hollywood, people are swirling and whatever, and people can get kind of pretentious about it. But when you think about the entire community, there are so many just amazing people who are passionate about what it is that they do, what it is that they make or drink, and
absolutely
are so welcoming, which I love hearing. Like, I love hearing about your winemaker who is just like, yeah.
Oh God, I love Neil. I miss him so much. I send him messages all the time. And that's something that I actually love about the wine industry in Idaho is because on their pamphlet, and I think I actually have one sitting over here somewhere. On their pamphlet that they have is like every year they put together one of these where it's like it's a whole booklet of the different wineries. It's like a whole, I mean, there's 60 wineries in the state, so we can still fit it in one book. So I mean, we're getting there. But the last one that they put out, and now like their slogan for the Idaho Wine Commission, Moya put this together, and her brain team of wonderful people, is "Come as you are." Like, they put together this whole commercial of, like there's this woman who's paddleboarding down the Boise River, and she stops over on the side, and then there's a bunch of wines that are in the urban area of Boise. And you can literally paddleboard down the river from one winery to the other.
That's awesome.
And it's like, you can come as you are. You can bring your dog. You can bring your kids. I remember the first time I went to Talaya Wine Company, which is a downtown urban Boise winery. It was St. Patrick's Day, and me and a friend of mine went. It's a 2-hour drive from Twin Falls to Boise. And I was like, I want to go wine tasting. And it was a Saturday, or I think it was a Sunday on that day. And I was like, what? I want to go wine tasting. You want to come? And she's like, yeah, sure. So we brought all of our kids to this winery, and it's, it's a nice winery. And everybody in the winery was just like, oh my God, like, thanks for bringing your kids. They're so sweet. Like, can we get them any water? Can we get them a snack? Like, do you want to sit over on this side so that way you can kind of dominate a corner? Like, do you need anything? One of the girls, her name's Heather, she brought out coloring books for the kids. And I was like,
Awesome.
this is awesome. Like, I'm a wine tasting mom. Like, my kid has been to more wineries than my parents. Like,
I love that.
my friend Neil, who, like I said, he helped me cut my teeth. He also has watched my daughter grow up in this wine industry before we moved. And she got so accustomed to be so comfortable in the cellar. There was one time we went on a wine tour in California, and there was a pressure washer that was supposed to wash, to wash out the tanks, just sitting right there. And she goes over, grabs the hose, and she goes, "Mommy, I work now." All right.
Do you, Boo?
Cool.
Yes. I love it. I love
Cool.
that.
I mean, you can be my little cellar rat. So she's my little cellar mouse.
Oh, I love
But, and that was one thing that I love about the wine industry in Idaho is that, you can walk in one time and there's a very good chance that they're going to remember who you are. And they're going to remember what you want to drink. And it's not because of technology, because like the technology aspect of things that would help them remember, like what your favorite wines were. Did you bring your kid in last time? Did you sign up as a wine club member? Those things, the tools that could help them do that, not everybody has them there.
Right.
It's just their memory. It's who they are. It's their personalities, where it's like, I remember the very first time I went into Williamson Winery. It's one of the oldest families, not the oldest, but it's one of the oldest families in wine in Idaho. And I remember Beverly, she's one of the sister and co-owner of the business. And she remembered that I loved their Petit Verdot. And I was like, oh my God. And their Petit Syrah, so good. And they have a Malbec that's just out of this world. And she remembered that when I did my tasting with her that I loved those. So she goes in the back and pulls out, the next time I came in, we did a whole varietal lineup for 4 years. We started in 2012 and went to 2015. I was like, 2011, 2015. I was just like, I was just a normal customer. Like, I wasn't a wine club member. I wasn't anything. And she was just like, well, I remember that you really like the Malbec. So I thought that we had these open from tasting the other day. I thought you might want to try them.
That's awesome. I love that.
People would pay hundreds of dollars to do that normally. I mean, like at these fancier wineries. And, but you're right that there is a lot of like prestige, like that whole, I call it vanipity.
I love it.
They have kind of a vanipity kind of sense of looking at the wine industry, whereas, that's one thing that I think a part of the reason why I fell in love so much with the wine industry it was because of my experience starting in Idaho. Is because, I could ask all the dumb questions and didn't have to worry about people turning their nose up at me. It's like I would ask a really silly question doing a tasting at the table, and all of a sudden, like wine club members down the bar from me would be like, oh, and they would jump in on the conversation. It was like, oh, do you remember that one year when, and so it became like this whole community conversation doing one person's tasting.
I love that. I want to go because like now that ever since you said paddleboarding down, like I know that would be like the worst idea for me. But
don't worry, they have like bicycles that you can rent and you can go down the same path. They have a bicycle track. You can do that too, or you can just walk.
That sounds good too. But I like the paddleboarding idea just like already like blew my mind. Or maybe like a kayak would be better at, because like I can't, even sober, I can't stand on a paddleboard. I don't know why.
Me either.
My body is not built for it. But
as soon as I stand up, like I can do it on my knees just fine. As soon as I stand up though, it's like it's over.
In the water.
Instant.
I'm wet.
So kind of cool thing that I wanted to share is that what most people don't know is that Idaho actually planted grapes about the same time, if not previous to when California planted grapes.
Really?
Oh. Yes. So the wine region there actually started in 1865 is when first grapes were ever planted there. And so it was crazy. A lot of people don't know that because who ever heard of Idaho wine, right? Like you said it earlier, it's like whoever knew about like Idaho wine. And it's because during the Prohibition era, like everything was ripped out.
Mm.
I always used to tell the story on my wine bus when I was doing the tours. It's like, we have a lot of really good people in this state, and a lot of really good people who also follow the law a little too good. And so when Prohibition was happening, they were like, oh no, we're not just going to let the wines go dormant. We're going to rip them all up. Like, just
Wow.
rip them. So we went from having a very, very good wine industry from 1865 to 1919, and then the Prohibition started, and it all went downhill. And then grapes weren't planted again until the 1970s. So then we were
Wow.
already behind California,
Mhm.
trying to catch up, and then Oregon and Washington and everywhere else took off. And so it became a lot more slow going. And of course, viticultural and that whole, farming area started becoming more predominant in potatoes and cattle and dairy
Right.
and
Right.
all the things that Idaho is known for. But, and that was kind of the problem, was that because of the Prohibition era, we got so far behind all of our neighbors, is that, we became an afterthought
Mhm.
until, the last, 30 years. And granted, it hasn't been just the 30 years because San Chapelle Winery, you can probably actually get their wine in California.
Okay.
But San Chapelle Winery is the oldest. It's not the oldest family owned winery anymore, but it is the oldest and the largest winery in the state.
Okay.
And that opened in 1975.
Oh.
So it's old, it's beautiful, it's designed after this beautiful French chateau up on a hill where you can look out over the entire valley of wines. It's gorgeous. Highly recommend, if you come to Idaho, you should go to San Chapelle.
Okay.
Really, you should hit all of them because there's not a bad winery there.
Mhm.
But if you're looking for some killer views, you need to come out in the summertime. They have all these chairs right in front where you can just sit and sip on wine and enjoy the view of the vines,
I still want to
all the
do
way
that.
down the valley. So yeah, and that's, it's so many people didn't know about Idaho wines,
Mhm.
and there were so many families that were out here. And that's the big thing, is that a lot of these families who started these
Mhm.
Idaho wines and the wineries and started planting the grapes again and doing all the work, some of these families, they still own these wineries.
That's awesome.
Like Hell's Canyon Winery, I absolutely love these guys. So it was a father and his wife who started Hell's Canyon. His name's Steve. He is the smartest man I have ever met in wine.
Wow. All
And
right.
he's fantastic. And he's one of the guys that you tell him one thing once and he retains it for the rest of his life.
Mm.
And he actually grew up in France. He spent many years of his adolescence in France learning about French wine. So he loves Bordeaux. He loves Bordeaux
Mhm.
blends. He loves Bordeaux grapes. And so when he, moving back to Idaho, he actually, he started doing a wine import before they actually started planting grapes again. So he did a wine import. So he was already building up a wine community before he even had wine of his own to
Mhm.
sell. And then he started, planting the grapes, and then he started having product to sell. And, but he still owns that winery. And I did a
Right.
wine blending class. It was a wine barrel
Ooh,
blending class with him. Oh,
that sounds
phenomenal.
so.
Phenomenal. I could have sat there and said one thing and dropped a pin into his little brain and been like, okay, now I said this, go. What do you have to teach me? Go.
That is amazing. That sounds like so much fun. Oh my gosh.
Yes, it was amazing. And he said during that class, and it's something that resonated with me. He's like, I've spent over half of my life in wine. He spent, I
Mhm.
think, he said 40 years, 40 plus years in wine. And he goes, and if I don't learn something new every year, he goes, I missed out. He goes,
Mhm.
there's always something changing in this industry. There's always something new. He goes, you can never get bored because every year has something new to offer, whether it's the weather, the new terroir, do you want to plant
Mhm.
something different? You want to try a new blend. I planted Merlot 15 years ago, but people don't drink Merlot anymore. So what do you do with it? It's an ever-changing industry with new demographics, with new tastes, with new trends, everything. And yet it's still such an old world thing that I love that balance in between the two. And he explained it so well. It's if I didn't learn something new this year, he goes, I failed. I missed out.
Mhm. There's, I mean, like, even just from like the wine itself, like vintage to vintage, every year wine's different. So you got to learn something new every year. I feel like it's so
Absolutely.
amazing. So what do you think needs to happen to get Idaho like more recognition?
Doing things like this, just spreading the word. I think that if there was more, it's introducing new technologies into that old world again. So like that's part of what I do with the vintage wine marketing is, we do the social media marketing, we do the Facebook and the Instagram and stuff, but being able to capture an audience and retain that audience. And that's one thing that I love about the chatbots is because, how many times do you go into a tasting room and you're given like that little card of let's get your name, your information, and we'll follow up with you. And then they never do.
Right.
Or you don't turn it in because you're like, well, I don't want a bunch of spam mail. Like, I just want to taste wine. Or,
Exactly.
like whatever the reason is. And I remember I set up an email at one point where they ask you to sign up, give your email for something. And I have a fake email that I set up just for spam.
I think everybody does nowadays. Like,
Yeah, I think that's not a new thing anymore. And that's just it, though, is that like there's this, they capture, Idaho wines capture the people, but unless there's a way to follow up with people, like eventually it's like a bad relationship. Like you're going to lose them.
yeah, for sure.
And so I think that if people, like if the Idaho wine region was to adapt and overcome the new technologies, and honestly, like, and it's not just Idaho, I can name off tons of wineries all along the West Coast, all the way over to the East Coast that everybody needs this. Everybody needs to be able to have something that can continue the conversation, because that's how you have good customers. That's how you build good wine regions, is to have a continuous customer base. So I think that if we were able to follow people home in a not creepy stalker way,
Yeah.
they're going to be able to remember that. It's like, this is one thing that I love is that, when you go to a winery and you do their wine tasting and you taste like that perfect wine and you take it home, and then you go to another winery and you go to another winery and then you go to another winery. And we all know how that ends when you go to like 4 or 5 wineries, is that you're really happy at the end and you don't really remember everything at the end. No, even in the wine industry, like everybody has their tolerance level, and it might not be enough to remember what that favorite wine was at that last winery.
Yes, for sure. Not everyone
So,
walks with a book. I don't even know where my wine is, but I do have a book somewhere because I'm a nerd.
Girl, I'm with you. I do that in my wine tasting journal.
That's
Yes.
Mine's like red, but I have exactly that.
See, and you're right. Not everybody does that. So one thing that I started doing, and because I can't, force wineries to work with me, and I can't force them to adapt to new technologies. But one thing that I do is that with the wine tour company that we have, is that I set up chatbots for every single winery, and so that I have this. It's a virtual assistant that follows you through your tour. So you have your tour guide who's actually talking to you, but then you have Sherry Chardonnay, who is your virtual tour guide, and she follows up with you. It's all timed out perfectly, so that way from the time that you start your tour, you get a little piece of information about the wine industry in Idaho. And then it follows up with you. It's like, oh, well, I see on your route today, you're going to go to Koning Winery. My favorite wine there is their late harvest Chardonnay. It's like, or their ice wine. Oh yeah, their ice wine. Their ice wine's really good. It's like, my favorite wine there is their ice wine. What was your favorite wine? And so they get to type in what their favorite wine was. And that way, while they're still sober, they can remember what they're like, while it's all still fresh in their minds, they can type in what their favorite wines are. And then that information, we can actually, for wineries who wanted to participate, like we can give that information to the wineries and be like, hey, we have got like 30 people in the last month who said that they love your ice wine. Here, this is a way that you can follow up with them. It's like, we can send out a promo message saying, hey, we saw that you love your ice wine. We can follow up with that now. But it's also like a digital tasting book where you might not remember 2 months from now. It's like, God, I remember like when we went on that wine tour, do you remember that great wine that we had? And you can never pull it up, like at that tip of your tongue kind of deal.
Oh yeah.
And so, because nobody deletes Facebook messages, right? Like, no, who goes through their Facebook inbox and empties it?
I don't think anybody does. It doesn't
Nobody.
hold space on your phone, so.
Right. And so, like, it's still sitting in your Facebook inbox, and you can go back through your whole tour of all the wineries that you went to. If you added notes, if you didn't add notes, whatever, like, you can at least remember all the wineries that you went to, and that way you can kind of like narrow down and go back through and be like, oh, yeah, I remember we went to, Williamson. And I love their Malbec. And, now we can go back and I can either reach out to them and order again, or I can, fill in the blank. But it's a way to give them like a digital tasting book that follows them home.
Mm. That's so cool. I love that.
It's just sharing, taking it, going, experiencing it, and bringing it home and sharing it with other people. That's going to be the best way, because until you really taste it for yourself, it's always going to be like, I'm sorry, Idaho has wines?
Yeah, for sure.
Are you sure it's not potato vodka? Because
I literally, not gonna lie, I literally was talking to someone earlier today. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna talk to someone from a podcast about Idaho wines. And they're like, is it made out of potatoes? And I was like, that's vodka, but okay.
It's all alcohol in the end, right? I mean,
At the end of the day, it'll make you happy.
Right? Gives you that warm feel good.
Yeah, exactly. So is there anything else that you would like to make sure that everyone knows about Idaho wines before we hop off?
Oh, I would say get it, try it, experience it, go, love it. Like I said, there are 22 varietals that we grow. Last I looked, I'm pretty sure that they just tested a few others. So there's more coming down the pipeline all the time. But just go and try it, taste the ones out on the Sunny Slope in Caldwell. If you get a chance, go up to the Lewis and Clark. Like, if you live in Washington, you can drive right across to Coeur d'Alene and try some amazing wines from Idaho. There's so many good wines that are just right there that are so close. But just get out and try it, because it's not just going to be the experience of tasting the wines. It's going to be the whole community aspect that comes with tasting the wines. It's going to change your outlook on tasting wines and visiting wineries. And I remember my parents came down to visit a couple times, and she's like, Phylicia, it's not just expensive, because my parents live in Alaska. It's like, it's not just expensive to fly down to you. It's expensive for us to stay with you. And I was like, why? And she goes, because we always go home with wine. And like, not just like a little bit of wine. We're talking cases. They went home last time with 3.5 cases of wine.
Yes. My kind of people.
Yes. And a little side note is that if you fly with Alaska Airlines, your wines fly for free out of Idaho.
Wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
Stop.
No, not even kidding. So if you fly with Alaska Airlines, this is kind of like a cool brainchild for me. I'm not going to take full credit because I didn't see it from start to finish, but it was a suggestion that I had put into the Idaho Wine Commission. And I was like, well, why don't we try to get Boise and to be part of because Boise is a huge stop for Alaska Airlines. They're like, well, we've got a wine region. We have people who go home with wine. So we petitioned Alaska Airlines, and Idaho Wine Commission saw it all the way through. And so now, starting as of beginning of 2017, we have, if you fly with Alaska Airlines, your wines fly for free.
That's awesome. All right. So now my boyfriend's about to get a text message. Like, we're going to Idaho. Like, now.
Like I said, it's cool that you can get these little things, this little booklet, and you can go history and the tasting knowledge. And of course, if you ever need any help, let me know, and I will direct you to all the most wonderful people. But it's a whole atmosphere there. Like, you can't just go and taste the wines and be done. Like, you go home with a sense of community, and that's what I love. And there's something for everybody. 22 varietals. Everybody has something to taste there.
That's beautiful. So if anyone wants to be able to get in contact with you, like get a wine tour, any of that kind of stuff, where can they find you?
You can find the wine tour information at idahowinetours.com or on Facebook with Idaho Wine Tours. And of course, there's a ton of information. If you want to just learn more about Idaho wines, you can go to the Idaho Wine Commission website, which I don't have pulled up right now, or else I'll tell you exactly what that is. But you can search Idaho Wine Commission, and they have a ton of resources that you can learn about Idaho wines. So that's always a good resource. And if you guys have any questions about, also doing not just wine tours, or like if you wanted to learn more about like wine marketing and wine marketing bots, you can always reach out to me on Facebook, which is Vintage Vine Marketing.
Vintage Vine Marketing.
I liked how the two V's on my logo make a W. So for wine.
I love that. That is so smart. All of these good things. That's amazing. So thank you so much for joining me this evening, Phylicia, or this morning for you. I hope you can go back to sleep or take a nap or something today.
Yeah, no kidding. My baby's going to be waking up here in about 3 hours. So thank God my husband's off tomorrow, so he gets to wake up with the baby.
Oh, yay. I really appreciate you joining me. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. For those listening or watching, I really appreciate you tuning in. Remember, we go live 6 p.m. Pacific every Thursday, except for next Thursday, actually. We're going to have a special Valentine's Day wine and love broadcast, and that's going to be at noon with my dear friend who talks all sorts of awesomeness about your body, and getting in touch with your feminine side. So it's going to be a blast. So come join me with Portia Newton, because she's going to rock it out as well. And Phylicia, you did amazing. Thank you so much. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.